I'm Liz Montgomery, and I'm the executive director of NISA, and I do this work in memory of my son, Mason. He died in 2003 at 5.5 months old. I don't want families to grieve alone, and I want them to know that they're supported and that there's resources and other people out there like us.
I'm Aileen Carroll. I work with Northwest Infant Survival and SIDS Alliance as a parent whose baby passed away in 2001, Lucy Marie, and I volunteer my time as the chairperson of the Healing Together program, which is our grief support program. I know how hard this walk is through grief, death, and dying, and I want to give them a sense of courage and hope. I feel like that's what I was called to do, so I like to spend my time doing that.
Our goal is to connect with families from just a recent loss to families who, like us, are 20, 21 years out from, the death of our children.
I remember thinking, though Lucy didn't die on my watch, I didn't do enough to ask the daycare provider about how she was going to lay my daughter down to sleep. And so if I could go back in time, I felt guilty. I hadn't checked off all the things that I was supposed to do to keep her safe and alive. So I ran with that guilt and played a track that was like, if I could have, would have, should have, for years and years and years about what could I have done differently and better so that she would have lived.
When I brought Mason over to the babysitter, she looked at me and said, "Hey, do you want to bring his pack and play over?" And I'm like, "No, he's fine. He takes his nap on the couch," because the 3 months of maternity leave, guess where he took his nap? Was on a couch, because that's just what we knew at the time.
Yep.
That was normal. All we had for safe sleep guidelines was put your baby on their back. There was nothing about soft surfaces or pillows or any of that. But as time goes on, you are more forgiving of yourself, I think. And so I don't carry that guilt anymore, but I surely did that first, 5 years.
I had no idea how to grieve. This was foreign to me. This was a complete tragedy that turned us upside down overnight. We had a completely healthy baby. She went to daycare. She was placed face down to sleep for her nap and never woke up. So trying to sort through trauma, hurt, I was not versed in that at all. And neither was my mom or my siblings. My support network was pretty limited.
Does the pain get easier? Well, yes. As you grow and experience life. But there are days. And kind of think of it like ripping a Band-Aid off for whatever reason. I don't know. You had talked about a wedding that you were recently at. Mm-hmm. That broke me. That makes me really sad to think about that. But there's really significant events that can happen 20 years later, and that grief comes back. I don't think it's as raw and as deep, but it's like, he should be here, right?
Yeah.
Like, he should be here, and he's not. So, does it get better? Yes.
Your ability to manage when you hit that grief is what gets better.
Yes.
The grief is always as sad.
Yeah.
As you grow, you get a toolkit that you build that helps you figure out how to manage those moments that just hit you like a ton of bricks. One of the reasons we came up with this idea about these videos are for people who are searching for a connectivity, some sense of information. The internet is different than when my daughter died 20 years ago, so the ability to find some information, I think that's what people are searching for online. Yes, information about, okay, why did my baby die, but also information about, okay, but how do I do this? I never expected this. Now what do I do? And so I think our hope with the videos is one way to connect with those who are searching for information. This initial grief, death, and dying is a little different for everybody. I think it's so overwhelming at first. Everybody is shell-shocked, if I could use that word. They're really just reeling from disbelief, then slowly realize the hopes that you had for the baby or the child, because we're talking about miscarriage, stillbirth, infant loss, even child death. These hopes that you had for your child are now gone. The hopes that you had for the definition of your family are gone. So you start asking a lot of questions, whether am I to blame? You ask questions about, why is this happening? Could I have changed anything? And playing a tape that says, I wish I could have done it differently, wish I had known. I think that's a frequent question. So people are searching in the beginning for somebody to help them answer those questions. And I think ultimately hope that they could take it away, and they can't. So when they finally work through their grief, they realize they're left with this loss and this pain. And now what do I do with it on a regular basis?
I would say the same for me when it comes to grief and dealing with grief. And also, our family, we have a very close family, extended family, and we hadn't experienced tragedy, let alone the death of a child, right? So we had no idea. And I think also on this topic, nobody likes to talk about infants dying or pregnancy loss or children dying. It was at some level a taboo subject. You just didn't talk about it. And I think that's another goal of mine is being able to talk about that and share, meaning infant loss, and talking about it and being public about it and sharing our children with our community and our, and to be able to it's okay to talk about this, and there is help and there's resources.
Well, first, I want to say there's a lot of myths, lies related to what grief is and grief isn't. And that's a little bit about what we're trying to get at here, is that you will be sad for a long time, but at some point there are things that make you joyful, whether it's an existing child in the house or a future child, or when you're capable at some point seeing somebody else have a baby and seeing joy in that. Laughter will return when you realize that I like to tell people that your baby would want you to laugh if that's your natural inclination, want you to be joyful at moments worthy of joy. But understand if you're sad because it's their birthday or their death day. But I think you don't know true joy until you've had true sorrow. So at some point your joy will be exponential because you get how bad the loss was. So really what brings you joy is even better. But it takes time.